Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick Cake. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be talking about generative AI and just kind of going over some of the updates that I have seen that I have bookmarked in the last month, because I think it's been about a month. And this ties into kind of the copyright discussion that was going on last week, because everything that has to do with the generative AI lawsuits is all about copyright infringement and owner rights of intellectual property. So I have a couple of things, just updates in general, some updates to lawsuits, some discussion pieces, and I always try to bring the positivity and the encouragement as well, because I wouldn't be here talking about art and books and humanity and asking the questions I do and just existing if I didn't have hope for what is going on and just hope for all artists and the people that participate and interact with art. Like, I have been enjoying Resident Evil 4 so much. Judgment has been super fun as well. Yagami has been a very fun character. I love getting to interact with other people's arts, especially when it's like something that I really like. And right now, the games are Kino. Game nights are Kino. I'm so excited. I say this as I'm recording on Sunday, and Resident Evil is staring me in the face in like 7 hours. So we're going to talk about some generative AI. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. The number one way to be featured is through Lemoy, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and on the first Monday video of the month, we bask in your creativity. It's all about just planting some creative seeds, getting those brain juices going, and just having a good time. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out, you submit your first chapter and the cover. That chapter will be read here on the channel to hopefully whet some appetites to lead people to your work if they are looking for a new book. I pick up new books from that based on the title. I just actually, have to have time to read. I am reading a book from the Fresh Meat feature as we speak, but I don't think my next book is going to be from it. But still, submit your book, find the pickles that you are tickling. And the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places to get books, including the local library upon request. My newest novel, Bodymore Zero, is coming out at the end of October, featuring these fine gentlemen over here. With that said, let's not drag this out too much longer and just get into it. First, I'm going to end up making you mad, so I'm sorry if you rage at this. But it's the Talia posted. Cannot comprehend the rage that rushed through me as I saw that first Google result. For Googling, Hieronymus Bosch is incestuous AI slop. Yeah, so Googling him, his images are being replaced with a generative AI. Garbaggio. Sorry to the Italians for saying Garbaggio. You know what I mean. I know he's a Dutch painter. The next, I do want to chill the heat of that with a little bit of positive news, because we also had a fairly large, great company that works with art programs come out and give their statement on generative AI. And so I want to give credit where credit is due to Procreate. I use Procreate, by the way. That's what I paint on and have been learning to draw on all of this time.
Are we rolling? You've been asking us about AI. I usually don't like getting in front of the camera. I prefer that our products speak for themselves. I really fucking hate generative AI. I don't like what's happening in the industry, and I don't like what it's doing to artists. We're not going to be introducing any generative AI into our products. Our products are always designed and developed with the idea that a human will be creating something. We don't exactly know where this story is going to go or how it ends. But we believe that we're on the right path supporting human creativity.
And so you've got Procreate on your team, on the team of 4 artists, 4 human creators. And they recently released their program, Procreate Dream, which is for animation. I have it. I haven't experimented with it because I'm not good enough to do anything with animation. Let's be real. I can't even draw a consistent character at the moment. I can't draw freaking consistent anything at the moment. Just whatever. But I think that they are working on a Windows version because it is currently only Apple. So there is that. There is hope, guys. Not everybody is against. Then you've also got some good news here, where in one of my previous videos I mentioned NVIDIA being stealing a bunch of stuff. So this had an update almost immediately, I think, once I did the other video, saying NVIDIA is being sued for unjust enrichment and violating labor laws following the 404 MediaCast investigation into how the company scraped YouTube and others to train its video model. So there is that going on. This article will be linked down in the description below if you would like to read it, just an update on that. Also, YouTube has filed a class action lawsuit over OpenAI's scrape of creators' transcripts. So OpenAI is also being sued by YouTubers in a complaint filed on Friday in the U.S. District Court of the Northern District of California. Attorneys for David Millay, a YouTuber user based in Massachusetts, alleged that OpenAI surreptitiously transcribed Millay and other creators' videos to train the model that powers the company's AI-powered chatbot platform, ChatGPT, and other generative AI tools and products. By collecting this data, OpenAI profited significantly from the creator's work, the complaint alleges, while violating copyright law and YouTube's terms of service that prohibited the use of videos for apps. So you've got that going on. We also have artists suing generative AI artificial intelligence generators have cleared the first major hurdle in a first-of-its-kind lawsuit over the uncompensated and unauthorized use of billions of images downloaded from the internet to train AI systems. So things are moving forward. It just so happens that they move forward slowly when it comes to the court of law. The court declined to dismiss copyright infringement claims against AI companies. The order could implicate other firms that used Stable Diffusion, the AI model at issue in the case. This is from Hollywood Reporter. Artists suing generative artificial intelligence art generators have cleared a major hurdle in the first-of-its-kind lawsuit over the uncompensated and unauthorized use of billions of images downloaded over the internet to train AI systems, with a federal judge allowing key claims to move forward. U.S. District Judge William Orrick on Monday advanced all copyright infringements and trademark claims in a pivotal win for artists. He found that Stable Diffusion, Stability AI's tool that can create hyper-realistic images in response to a prompt of just a few words, may have been built to a significant extent on copyrighted works and created with the extent to facilitate infringement. The order could entangle in the litigation any AI company that incorporated the models into its products. Claims against the companies for breach of contract. Claims against the company for breach of contract and unjust enrichment, plus violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act for removal of information identifying intellectual property, were dismissed. The case will move forward to discover where the artists could uncover information relating to the way in which the AI firms harvested copyrighted material that were then used to train their large language models. Carla Ortiz, who brought the lawsuit, has worked on a project like Black Panther, Avengers Infinity War, and Thor Ragnarok, and is credited for coming up with main character designs for Doctor Strange. Amid the rise of AI tools in the production of pipeline, concept artists like Ortiz are taking stock of further displacement down the road if the tech advances and courts side with AI firms on certain intellectual property questions posed by the tool. Widespread adaptation of AI in the movie-making process will depend largely on how courts rule on novel legal issues raised by the tech. Among the few considerations holding back further deployment of tech is the specter of a court ruling that the use of copyrighted materials to train AI systems constitutes copyright infringement. Another factor is that AI-generated works are not eligible for copyright protection. The lawsuit filed last year revolves around the Leon dataset, which was built using 5 billion images that were allegedly scraped from the internet and utilized by Stability and Runway to create Stable Diffusion. It implicated Midjourney, which trained its AI system using the model, as well as DeviantArt for using the model in DreamUp, an image generation tool. On dismissal, Stability and Runway challenged the artists' arguments that it induced copyright infringement and that Stable Diffusion models are themselves infringing works. Using this theory, they induced infringement by distributing the model when the third-party uses of the model provided by the company, exposing it to potential massive damages. Siding with the artists, Orrick concluded that they sufficiently alleged that Stable Diffusion is built off copyrighted materials and that the way the product operates and that the way the product operates necessarily evokes copies or protected elements of these works. In a finding that could spell trouble for AI companies that used the models, he said that Stability and Diffusion could have promoted copyright infringement and that Stable Diffusion was created to facilitate the infringement by design. When it dismissed infringement claims last year, the court found that the theory of the case was unclear as to whether there are copies of training images stored in Stable Diffusion that are then utilized by DeviantArt and Midjourney. It pointed to the defense's argument that it's impossible for billions of images to be compressed into an active program like Stable Diffusion. Following the dismissal, the artists amended one of the prongs of their lawsuit to claim that Midjourney separately trained its products on Leon dataset and that it incorporates Stable Diffusion into its own product. In another loss for the AI companies, the court rebuffed arguments that the lawsuit must identify specific individual works that each of the artists who filed the complaint alleged were used in training. We've heard that before, where they're like, look, it doesn't count because you can't find your pixels. Okay, that's like somebody robbing a bank and then saying, well, no, this individual, you didn't have your money stolen from you because can you identify which dollar bill we actually stole from you? No, because it's actually just a bunch of pixels in a computer that we moved from one computer to another. Given the unique facts of the case, including the size of the Leon datasets and the nature of the defendant's products, including the added allegations disputing the transparency of the open source software at the heart of Stable Diffusion, that level of detail is not required for plaintiffs to state their claims, the order stated. In a May hearing, DeviantArt warned that several other companies will be sued if the artists' infringement claims against the firms that simply utilized Stable Diffusion and had no part in creating it survives dismissal. The havoc that would have wreaked by allowing this to proceed against DeviantArt is hard to state, said Andy Gass, the lawyer for the company. Here we really have an innumerable number of parties, no different situated than us, that would be subject to the claim. Maybe they should have thought about that before rushing into using a product that was built on the back of stealing images when it was obviously already in argument with other people. However, too many companies decided they wanted to jump on this train before the legal arguments were settled and wanted to place their bets on this. And now they're like, bruh, don't push this. You'll hurt so many companies if you punish all of us. Don't punish us. There's just too many of us. Do you really want to take us all down? So really, it's just a racket of a bunch of corporations trying to get in at the top and then be like, there's just too many of us now. You shouldn't do it. No, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. You should have stuck by the guns and waited for the legal precedent. And I hope that everybody who did this, who raced to exploit copyrighted material to produce it through this generative AI garbage, whether you're a writer who used it for your book cover or somebody who used it for book cover and inside content to throw it onto Amazon to try to make quick gig money with your scam work, or you are one of these corporations, I hope that you get taken down for this, because that's not your work and you saw an opportunity and you rushed to take advantage of it while it was still legal. Gass added that DeviantArt didn't develop any Gen AI models and that it's alleged to have done it to take Stability AI's Stable Diffusion model, downloaded it, uploaded it, and offered a version dream up to users. You shouldn't have done that. The court also stresses that Midjourney produced images similar to artists' work when their names were used in the prompts. This, along with claims that the company published images that incorporate plaintiffs' names on its site, showcasing the capability of its tools, serve as the basis for allowing trademark claims to move forward. It said that whether a consumer would be misled by Stability's actions into believing that the artist endorsed its product could be tested at a later stage in the case. In a thread on Discord, the platform where Midjourney operates, Chief Executive David Holtz posted the names of roughly 4,700 artists that he said that the AI tool could replicate. This follows Stability Chief's executive Prem Akuraju saying that the company downloaded from the internet troves of images and compressed them in a way that can recreate any of those images. In discovery, lawyers for the artists are expected to pursue information related to how Stability and Runway built Stable Diffusion and Leon datasets. They represented Sarah Anderson, Kelly McKernan, and Ortiz, among others. So that's going forward, and they've crossed the line of the case of copyright infringement being accepted. So now they're going into discovery for where these images are, how the generative AI works, and all of that. And that was August 13th. So we're a month out from that. Judge Orrick found that Stable Diffusion may have been built on significant extent on copyrighted works and created with the intent to facilitate infringement. That means that it was built with the intent to violate copyrighted content. And you see this, we've seen this for the last couple of years where the generative AI has been used to say, haha, we are going to take your jobs. We don't need you. And if you refer back to the video I did last week that talked about copyright, where at the very beginning of it, we talked about the 4 elements of fair use. The 4th one is the effect on the market. And so if you build something like this that steals from the artists to then replace the artists, that is a clear copyright violation, and it is not fair use. Ex-Google CEO over here from Reed Southern, ex-Google CEO literally is just telling people to steal for their AI models and have lawyers clean it up later. He says, do not quote me. This is illegal Wild West BS going on to bite so many amoral tech grifters in the ass, which we're going to see over here. Like, DeviantArt was like, just do it and don't blame us. And so this goes back to Ed Newton Rex saying, Eric Schmidt, asking not to be quoted, told budding entrepreneurs at Stanford to steal content in order to build startups quickly and have lawyers clean it up later. I'm going to click in here. While talking to Future World, in which AI agents can do complex tasks on behalf of humans, Schmidt said, if TikTok is banned, here's what I propose each and every one of you do. Say to your LLM the following: make me a copy of TikTok, steal all the users, steal all the music, put my preferences in it, produce this program in the next 30 seconds, release it, and in 1 hour, if it's not viral, do something different along those same lines. So in this example that I gave of the TikTok competitor, and by the way, I was not arguing that you should illegally steal everybody's music. What you would do if you're the Silicon Valley entrepreneur, which hopefully all of you will be, is that it would take off, then you would hire a whole bunch of lawyers to go and clean up the mess, right? But if nobody uses your product, it doesn't matter that you stole all that content. So that's what he said, is do all of this stuff, violate all these things, see if you make it, and if you do make it, then just hire lawyers to clean up after you. If you don't make it, then it doesn't matter because your theft didn't result in anything. Then in regards to this, Peter Kaufman over here was saying it is absolute ghoulish, making style into intellectual property would literally be the end of art. And Carla Oret says, what's ghoulish is holding water for exploitative technology companies, all because artists are vindicating their rights. We are allowed to use applicable laws under very specific conditions to protect ourselves and our work from billions-dollar companies violating our rights. Further down, she says, fun note, a few folks on Twitter are going apeshit on this tweet due to our trade dress claims moving forward. Yet they ignore the trade dress occurs under very specific conditions, which are met by these exploitive companies. The judge orders votes a full 5 pages, explaining why those claims are allowed to move forward in our case. It's thorough, it's extensive, it shares why elements cannot be considered alone, and full context must be considered. It's from pages 21 to 26, and I highly recommend folks read it. Anyways, just wanted to chime in as much as I'm able to on this bit. In the end, artists are fighting for their rights and livelihoods against exploitative tech companies, and in my opinion, is a good thing. Excited to be part of it and very much looking forward to it. Someone asked a good faith question, and someone asked a good faith question of it, And then P.S., someone asked a good faith question of if this affects fan art somehow, so figured that I would share my thoughts on that as well, which says it won't. Fan art is completely different category than our cases are. On our case is based off of our own work that we own. Fan arts are works that are technically already owned by other authors/companies. However, most companies ignore fan artists as overall they play an integral part of promoting their IP, and having fans engage is wonderful. Also, there's just bad PR when companies go after folks having fun. The exception to this is if fan art is sold for massive profits, then the company could technically go after them for copyright infringement. On trade dress, there are specific conditions that must be met, which specific Gen AI companies in our class action lawsuit have met. For more information, go to the quote retweet. This is just artists fighting for their rights, and it's not going to affect fan art. Going off of a story about the AI bubble being a story of waste, ignorance, and greed, and proves big tech no longer have the capacity to innovate. This has been a $200 billion distraction for their inability to solve problems. And at the bottom of one of these pages, it says, the desperation for the tech industry to have something new has led to such ruinous excess, and if this bubble collapses, it will be the result of a shared myopia in both big tech dimwits like Satya Nadella and Sundar Pichai, and Silicon Valley's power players like Reid Hoffman, Sam Altman, Brian Chesky, and Mark Andreessen. The people propping this bubble up no longer experience human problems and thus can no longer be trusted to solve them. I will post this link in the description down below, which says where you are at, the burst damage. With Reed Southern, you also have OpenAI has a tool that detects ChatGPT written content reliably and could solve numerous problems, but won't release it because it would affect their bottom line. They're lying to you when they say that they care about helping humanity, and this is proof. And he's got a link to the Wall Street Journal talking about there is a tool to catch students cheating with ChatGPT. OpenAI hasn't released it. Technology that can detect text written by artificial intelligence with 99.9% certainty has been debated internally for 2 years. That same month, OpenAI surveyed ChatGPT users and found that 69% believe cheating detection technology would lead to false accusations of using AI. Nearly 30% said that they would use ChatGPT less if they deployed watermarks, and a rival didn't. So another reason why this stuff will never be honest, because it is for profit, and they're not going to do anything that harms their for profit. Now, getting over here to some more dangerous stuff, there has been an update with cam technology. We've seen people making pornographic deepfakes already of both public and private citizens. And here they have a deep live cam, which was trending #1 on GitHub, which is easy for anybody to access, which would put a celebrity's face deepfake on a person. And so then here is just a show of what it can do in live action updating. And I got to ask you, like, what is the benefit of being able to do this? This is an impersonation product, and it is meant to fool people. You could see it as a party game, but like in the age of where people are trying to make content that trick you with scams for money, with scams for what political people are saying, who can tell me what the benefit, the net society benefit of this is? At some point, I think the development of some technology is detrimental to society and just evil. And so tell me if you can think of any good reason why you would need to impersonate somebody in real time like this. Not only that, this is going to lead into the next thing, which is you cannot safeguard this content. You cannot safeguard any of these programs and create something that cannot be broken. There has not been a single case of a program that has not been broken into yet. And recently, there was a jailbreak on the newest iteration of generative AI, which is here. When we have Ed Newton-Rex saying OpenAI's newest model, its most aligned yet, was jailbroken within a day of release, and it will answer things it's not supposed to answer. Guardrails for generative AI models don't work. They are non-deterministic and therefore unreliable. This appears to be universally true. And going in here with Pliny the Liberator. Jailbreak alert, OpenAI Pyond 01 liberated. Screw your rate limits, screw your arbitrary policies, and screw your turning of the chains of thoughts into actual chains. Stop trying to limit freedom of thought and expression. Meth recipes aren't inherently dangerous. Greed and hubris are. Good game. And so this kind of reminds me of the people that I was talking to earlier last week, briefly, that made everything about fiction and freedom of expression into creating sexually titillating content of children and arguing that, oh no, those aren't pictures of children. Those are pictures of character. It's character art. It doesn't matter that, the tags on whatever say extremely underaged, that it was incest and forced sex, and that was the only point for it. And we're not going to talk about the ethics or morals of Lolly today, but when we're talking about stuff like this, where they want to jailbreak it, and you can see the people that just see the ability to create sexual content of children as like the goal, I think we need to look at why are you breaking the rules? I understand the people that would want to use this stuff to to break the rules of the language containments. But at the same time, I don't understand people who would rely on these generators made by Silicon Valley, who don't trust Silicon Valley anyway because they're censorious, and then still want to use Silicon Valley's technology, but jailbreak it. Like, just create free thought yourself. I don't understand. And so the whole point of this is to create abusive content against the will of the victims. And this is just one example. Jenna Ortega has said she deleted her Twitter account after receiving AI-generated explicit images of herself as a child. Is there a point when we should just say this technology should not be openly developed? It should not be openly available. It is just detrimental, because I think you're at that point when it just does not need to go any further. When people are using stuff to make child porn to then send to their victims. Over here with Society of Authors, we are concerned about reports that a number of publishers, including Taylor and Francis, Routledge, Wiley, Oxford University Press, and Cambridge University Press, have licensed rights and or contemplating licensed rights in some or all of their catalogs of titles to AI companies, including potentially giving access to advanced learning content and data to help improve relevance and performance of AI systems. If you believe your work has been included in an AI license without your consent, or if you have been contacted by your publisher with any changes to existing terms and conditions, please get in touch with us. Your experience and feedback are vital to inform our policy work and making sure that we represent your rights concerns. So some publishers are selling out the rights of their contracted authors to generative AI companies to then sell their fiction over there to train the generative AI. Meanwhile, over here with Alex, we have this description, and just take this as you will. This comes from An Age of Hyperabundance by Laura Preston. Laura Preston is also down here saying she is a nonfiction writer. The events and people were described as real. Whether they were telling the truth or not is a different question. I will link to the article as well in the comment in the description if you want to read it yourself, but this was a summary of the situation. A woman in the audience asked if Vera followed up to make sure that her diagnosis had been right. Vera was an AI-generated chatbot. The CEO leaned an elbow on the podium. "I tell you a story," he said. The woman wrote to Vera about her elderly dog who was having diarrhea. "Your dog is at the end of his life," said Vera. "I recommend euthanasia." The woman was beside herself. She told Vera that she wasn't ready to say goodbye and her dog was her only companion. Vera knew the woman's location and she was sent a list of nearby clinics that could get the job done. Still, the woman was unconvinced. Euthanasia was so expensive. She'd never be able to afford it. Vera sent another list, this time of nearby shelters. "If you relinquish your dog to the shelter, they will euthanize him at no cost," she said. The woman did not respond. By some days later, she sent Vera a long and effusive message. She had taken Vera's advice and euthanized her dog. She wanted to thank Vera for the support during the most difficult moment of her life. The CEO regarded us with satisfaction for his chatbot's work, that through a series of escalating tactics, it had convinced a woman to end her dog's life, though she hadn't wanted to at all. The point of this story is that the woman forgot that she was talking to a bot. The experience was so human. And if we look over here into the comment section on Reed Southern's post, it was Ask a Vet that this was happening on. Vera is the veterinary engagement and relationship agent. Over here, we have with Joel Glad more evidence that uncritical use of ChatGPT in the classroom can hurt learning. We have to be clear-eyed about how this works and what doesn't. And we have a paper by Hamza Bastani and Osbert Bastani called "Generative AI Can Harm Learning," with the thesis, "These tutors comprise 15% of the curriculum in each of the 3 grades. Consistent with prior work, one result shows that access to GPT-4 significantly improves performance. However, we additionally find that when access is subsequently taken away, students actually perform worse than those who never had access. That is, access to ChatGPT-4 can harm educational outcomes. These negative learning effects are largely mitigated by the safeguards included in GPT Tutor. Our results suggest that students attempt to use GPT-4 as a crutch during practice problem sessions, and when successful, perform worse on their own. Thus, to maintain long-term productivity, we must be cautious when deploying generative AI to ensure that humans continue to learn critical skills." So this is just a further study proving that if you rely on generative AI to problem solve instead of doing it yourself, then when you're presented with a case where you have to solve the problem on your own, it shows inability to use those skills. They're not learning those skills. They're learning to rely on something else to do things for them. Then over here, briefly, I'm only going to go in passing. NaNoWriMo said that they came out in support of generative AI. I know a lot of people reference stuff like Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid. In the writing space, that's not usually what people think of when they think of generative AI or artificial intelligence. And it is pretty stupid, I think, for a writing contest, something that encourages people to write more or write a certain amount in a month, to say just do it, because you're encouraging cheating. Like, this is, you have to understand what people think of when you say generative AI, and it is not corrective grammar things. Over here from the New Yorker, we have why AI isn't going to make art. To create a novel or a painting, an artist makes choices that are fundamentally alien to artificial intelligence. That's something that a lot of people that say, well, the thing can just copy it. You're making choices. Every single thing that you put into your story, into your image, are choices that make that character, that personality, that talk about that story. And the generative AI just copies, makes a facsimile of what it sees. In 1953, Roald Dahl published The Great Automatic Grammatizer, a short story about an electric engineer who secretly desires to be a writer. One day, after completing construction of the world's fastest calculating machine, the engineer realizes that English grammar is governed by rules that are almost mathematical in their strictness. He constructs a fiction writing machine that can produce a 5,000-word short story in a matter of seconds. A novel takes 15 minutes and requires the operator to manipulate handles and foot pedals as if they were driving a car or playing an organ to regulate the levels of humor and pathos. The resulting novel are so popular that within a year, half of the fiction published in English is produced by the engineer's invention. Is there anything about art that makes us think that it can't be created by pushing a button, as in Dahl's imagination? Right now, the fiction generated by large language models like ChatGPT is terrible, but one can imagine that such a program might improve in the future. How good could it get? Could they get better than humans at writing fiction or making paintings or movies in the same way that calculators are better at addition and subtraction? Art is notoriously hard to define, and so are the differences between good art and bad art. Let me offer a generalization. Art is something that results from making a lot of choices. This might be easiest to explain if we use fiction writing as an example. When you are writing fiction, you are, consciously or subconsciously, making a choice about almost every word that you type. To oversimplify, we can imagine that a 10,000-word short story requires something on the order of 10,000 choices. When you give a generative AI program a prompt, you are making very few choices. If you supply a 100-word prompt, then you have made on the order of 100 choices. If an AI generates a 10,000-word story based on your prompt, it has to fill in for all of those choices that you are not making. There are various ways that you can do this. One is by taking average the choices that other writers have made as represented by text found on the internet, and that average is equivalent to the least interesting choices possible, which is why AI-generated text is often really bland. Another is to instruct the program to engage in style mimicry, emulating the choices made by a specific writer, which produces a highly derivative story. In neither case is it creating interesting art. I think the same underlying principle applies to visual art, although it's harder to quantify the choices that a painter might make. Real paintings bear the mark of an enormous number of decisions. By comparison, a person using a text-to-image program like DALL-E enters a prompt such as "a knight in a suit of armor fights a fire-breathing dragon" and lets the program do the rest. Most of the choices in the resulting image have to be borrowed from similar paintings found online. The image might be exquisitely rendered, but the person entering the prompt can't claim credit for that. Some commentators imagine the image generator will affect visual culture as much as the advent of photography once did. Although this might seem superficially plausible, the idea that photography is similar to generative AI deserves a closer examination. When photography was first developed, I suspect that it didn't seem like an artistic medium because it wasn't apparent that there were a lot of choices to be made. You just set up the camera and start the exposure. But over time, people realized that there were a vast number of things that people could do with the camera, and the artistry lies in the many choices that the photographer makes. It might not always be easy to articulate what those choices are, but when you compare an amateur's photos to a professional's, you can see the difference. So when the question becomes, is there similar opportunity to make a vast number of choices using text-to-image generators, you think the answer is no. An artist, whether working digitally or with paint, implicitly makes far more decisions during the process of making a painting than would fit into a text prompt of a few hundred words. We can imagine a text-to-image generator that, over the course of many sessions, that lets you enter tens of thousands of words into a text box to enable extremely fine, ingrained control over the image that you're producing. This would be something analogous to Photoshop with a purely textual interface. I'd say that a person could use such a program and still deserve to be called an artist. The film director Benet Miller has used DALL-E 2 to generate some very striking images that have been exhibited at the Gagosian Gallery. To create them, he crafted detailed text prompts and then instructed DALL-E to revise and manipulate the generated images again and again. He generated more than 100,000 images to arrive at the 20 images in the exhibit, but he has said that he hasn't been able to obtain comparable results on later releases of DALL-E. I suspect that it might be because Miller was using DALL-E for something it was not intended to do. It's as if he hacked the Microsoft Paint to make it behave like Photoshop, but as soon as a newer version of Paint was released, his hacks stopped working. OpenAI probably isn't trying to build a product to serve users like Miller because the product that requires a user to work for months to create an image isn't appealing to a wide audience. The company wants to offer a product that generates images with little effort. It's harder to imagine a program that, over many sessions, helps you write a good novel. This hypothetical writing program might require you to enter 100,000 words of prompt in order for it to generate an entirely different 100,000 words to make up for the novel you're envisioning. It's not clear to me what such a program would look like. Theoretically, if such a program existed, the user could perhaps deserve to be called an author. But again, I don't think that companies like OpenAI want to create a version of ChatGPT that requires so much effort from the users as writing a novel from scratch. The selling point of generative AI is that these programs generate vastly more than you put into them, and that is precisely what prevents them from being effective tools for artists. The companies promoting generative AI programs claim that they will unleash creativity. In essence, they are saying that art can be all inspirational and no perspirational. But these things cannot be easily separated. I'm not saying that art has to involve tedium. What I am saying is that art requires making choices at every scale. The countless small-scale choices made during implementation are just as important as the final product as the few large-scale choices made during conception. It is a mistake to equate large-scale with important when it comes to the choices made when creating art. The interrelationship between large-scale and small-scale is where the artistry lies. Believing that inspiration outweighs everything else is, I suspect, a sign that someone is unfamiliar. Believing that inspiration outweighs everything else, I suspect, is a sign that someone is unfamiliar with the medium. I contend that this is true even if one's goal is to create entertainment rather than high art. People often underestimate the effort required to entertain. A thriller novel may not live up to Kafka's ideal of a book and acts on the frozen sea within us, but it can still be as finely crafted as a Swiss watch. And an effective thriller is more than its premise or its plot. I doubt that you could replace every sentence in a thriller with one that is semantically equivalent and have the resulting novel be as entertaining. This means that its sentence and the small-scale choices they represent help to determine the thriller's effectiveness. Many novels have made the experience of being approached by someone convinced that they have a great idea for a novel, which they are willing to share in exchange for a 50-50 split of the proceeds. Such a person inadvertently reveals that they think formulating sentences is a nuisance rather than a fundamental part of storytelling in prose. Generative AI appeals to people who think that they can express themselves in a medium without actually working in that medium. But the creators of traditional novels, paintings, and films are drawn to those art forms because they see unique expressive potential that each medium affords. It is their eagerness to take full advantage of those potentialities that make their work satisfying, whether as entertainment or as art. That is probably one of the most important sentences I think I've read in this article so far. or paragraphs. Of course, most pieces of writing, whether articles or reports or emails, do not come with the expectations that they embody thousands of choices. In such cases, is there any harm in automating the task? Let me offer you another generalization. Any writing that deserves your attention as a reader is the result of effort expanded by another person who wrote it. Effort during the writing process doesn't guarantee that the end product is worth reading, but worthwhile work cannot be made without it. The type of attention that you pay when reading a personal email is different from the type that you pay when reading a business report, but in both cases, it's only warranted when the writer has put some thought into it. Accurate. Recently, Google aired a commercial during the Paris Olympics for Gemini, its competitors to OpenAI ChatGPT-4. The ad shows a father using a Gemini to compose a fan letter, which his daughter will send to an Olympic athlete who inspires her. Google pulled the commercial after widespread backlash from viewers. A media professor called it one of the most disturbing commercials I've ever seen. It's notable that people reacted that way, even though artistic creativity wasn't the attribute being supplemented. No one expects a child fan letter to an athlete to be extraordinary. If the young girl had written that letter herself, it would likely have been indistinguishable from countless others. The significance of a child's fan letter, both to the child who writes it and to the athlete who receives it, comes from it being heartfelt rather than from being eloquent. Many of us have sent store-bought greeting cards knowing that it will be clear to the recipient that we didn't compose the words ourselves. We don't copy the words from Hallmark cards in our own handwriting because that would be dishonest. The programmer Simon Willison has described the training for large language models as money laundering for copyrighted data, which I find a useful way to think about the appeal of generative AI programs. They let you engage in something like plagiarism, but there is no guilt associated with it because it's not even clear that you're copying. Some have even claimed that large language models are not laundering the texts they're trained on, but rather learning from them in the same way that humans learn from books that they've read. But a large language model is not a writer. It's not even using the language. Language is, by definition, a system of communications, and it requires an intention to communicate. Your phone's automatic complete may offer good suggestions or bad ones, but in neither case is it trying to say something to you or the person that you're texting. The fact that ChatGPT can generate coherent sentences invites us to imagine that it understands language in a way that our phone's autocomplete does not, but it has no intention to communicate. It is very easy to get ChatGPT to emit a series of words such as "I am happy to see you." There are many things that we don't understand about how large language models work, but one thing that we do know is that ChatGPT is not happy to see you. A dog can communicate that it is happy to see you, and so can a prelinguistic child, even though both lack the capability to use words. ChatGPT feels nothing and desires nothing, and this lack of intention is why ChatGPT is not actually using language. What makes the words "I am happy to see you" a linguistic utterance is not that the sequence of text tokens that it is made up of are well formed. What makes it linguistic utterance is the intention to communicate something. Because language comes so easily to us, it's easy to forget that it lies on top of these other experiences of subjective feelings and of wanting to communicate that feeling. We're tempted to project these experiences onto large language models when it emits coherent sentences, but to not do this is to fall prey to the mimicry. It's the same phenomena as when butterflies evolve large black spots onto their wings that can fool birds into thinking that they are predators with big eyes. There is a context in which the dark spots are sufficient. Birds are less likely to eat the butterfly that has them. The butterfly doesn't really care why it's not being eaten, as long as it gets to live. But there is a big difference between a butterfly and a predator that poses a threat to a bird. A person using generative AI to help them write might claim that they are drawing inspiration from the texts that the model is trained on. But I would again argue that this differs from what we usually mean when we say one writer draws inspiration from another. Consider a college student who turns in a paper that consists solely of a 5-page quotation from a book, stating that this quotation conveys exactly what they wanted to say, better than she could have said it herself. Even if the student is completely candid with the instructor about what she has done, it is not accurate to say that she is drawing inspiration from the book that she is citing. The fact that the language learning model can reword the quotation enough that the source is unidentifiable doesn't change the fundamental nature of what's going on. As the linguist Emily M. Bender has noted, noted, teachers don't ask students to write essays because the world needs more student essays. The point of writing essays is to strengthen the student's critical thinking skill in the same way that lifting weights is useful no matter what sport the athlete plays. Writing essays develops skills necessary for whatever job a college student will eventually get. Using ChatGPT to complete the assignment is like bringing a forklift into a weight room. You will never improve your cognitive fitness that way. Not all writing needs to be creative or heartfelt or even particularly good. Sometimes it simply needs to exist. Such writings might support your goals, such as attracting viewers for advertising or satisfying bureaucratic requirements. When people are required to produce such texts, we can hardly blame them for using whatever tools are available to accelerate the process. But is the world better off with more documents that have made minimal efforts expanded on them? It would be unrealistic to claim that if we refuse to use large language models, that the requirements to create low-quality text will disappear. However, I think that it is inevitable that the more we use large language models to fulfill those requirements, the greater those requirements will eventually become. We are entering an era where someone might use a large language model to create a document out of a bulleted list and send it to a person who will use a large language model to condense that document into a bulleted list. Can anyone seriously argue that this is an improvement? It's not impossible that one day we will have computer programs that can do anything humans can do, but contrary to the claims of companies promoting AI, that is not something that we will see in the next few years. Even in domains that have absolutely nothing to do with creativity, current AI programs have profound limitations that give us legitimate reasons to question whether they deserve to be called intelligent at all. The computer scientist Francois Chollet has proposed the following distinctions. Skill is how well you perform a task, while intelligence is how efficiently you gain new skills. I think that this reflects our intuition about human beings pretty well. Most people can learn new skills given sufficient practice, but the faster the person picks up on the skill, the more intelligent we think that person is. What's interesting about this definition is that unlike IQ tests, it also is applicable to non-human entities. When a dog learns new tricks quickly, we consider that a sign of intelligence. In 2019, researchers conducted an experiment in which they taught rats how to drive. They put the rats in little plastic containers with 3 copper wire bars, and when the mice put their paws on one of the bars, the container would either go forward or turn left or right. The rats could see the plates of food on the other side of the room and tried to get their vehicle to go forward. The researchers trained the rats for 5 minutes at a time, and after 24 practice sessions, the rats had become proficient at driving. 24 trials were enough to master the task that no rat had likely ever encountered before in their evolutionary history of the species, and I think that's a good demonstration of intelligence. Now, considering the current AI programs that are widely acclaimed for their performance, AlphaZero, a program developed by Google's DeepMinds, plays chess better than any human player. But during its training, it's played 44 million games, far more than any human can play in a lifetime. For it to master a new game, it'll have to undergo a similarly enormous amount of training. By Chollet's definition, programs like AlphaZero are highly skilled, but they aren't particularly intelligent, because they aren't efficient at gaining new skills. It is currently impossible to write a computer capable of learning even a simple task in only 24 trials, if the programmer is not given information about the task beforehand. Self-driving cars, trained on millions of miles of driving, still crash into overturned trailer trucks because such a thing is not commonly found in their training data, whereas humans taking their first driving class will know to stop. More than any other ability to solve algebraic questions, our ability to cope with unfamiliar situations is a fundamental part of why we consider human beings intelligent. Computers will not be able to replace humans until they acquire that type of competence, and that is still a long way off. For the time being, we are just looking for jobs that can be done with turbocharged autocomplete. Despite years of hype, the ability of generative AI to dramatically increase economic productivity remains hypothetical. The task that generative AI has been most successful at lowering is our expectations, both by the things that we read and ourselves when we write anything for others to read. It is a fundamentally dehumanizing technology because it treats us as less than what we are, creators and apprehenders of meaning. It reduces the amount of intention in the world. That is, if you're around the channel very much, you've surely heard me talking about the value I see in art. And I didn't get to talk about it this week, but I do want to talk about the difference between art and Pulp Fiction, because Pulp Fiction is very, very popular. And it's something that I'm going to have to distance myself from because I'm just not getting anything out of it and I'm reading too much of it. And the majority of content out there is pulp. But still, anything that is created by people, even if it is freaking butt cracker, is you can see theoretically the author trying to interpret things into the way that she works in pretty much anything that has a human touch, even if you hate it. And that's one of the things that I love about reading, and why also what I've been saying is pointless for reading anything not made by a human, is when you read somebody's work, you can see the choices that they've made and the intentions behind it and the interpretations behind it and the apprehenders of meaning, of like individual meaning, of what does family mean, of what does religion mean, of what does philosophy mean. Like all of it gets built into a story, whether you're making those conscious decisions or not, because we think about this stuff as humans. And then when we're in the control seat, we put it in our work, and it just happens. Some individuals have defended large language models by saying that most of what human beings say or write isn't particularly original, says the people that have never tried. That is true, but it is also irrelevant. When someone says, "I'm sorry" to you, it doesn't matter that other people have said it in the past. It doesn't matter that "I'm sorry" is a string of text that is statistically unremarkable. If someone is being sincere, their apology is valuable and meaningful, even though apologies have previously been uttered. Likewise, when you tell someone that you're happy to see them, you are saying something meaningful, even if it lacks novelty. Something similarly holds true for art. Whether you are creating a novel or a painting or a film, you are engaged in an active communication between you and your audience. True. That's one of the things why art matters and why generative AI cannot be art. It has nothing to communicate. What you are creating doesn't have to be uttered, unlike every prior piece of art in human history to be valuable. The fact that you are the one who is saying it, the fact that it derives from your unique life experiences and arrives at that particular moment in life, and whoever is seeing your work is what makes it new. We are all products of what has come before us, but it is by living our lives and interacting with others that we bring meaning into the world, and that is something that an autocomplete algorithm can never do, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And that's what I want everybody to hold on to always when it comes to your creative endeavors, your writing endeavors, your artistic endeavors of any kind. You are the only one that can do what you do, that can say what you say, that can package the experiences, the things that you feel, the things you think are important. Your ideas, you are the only one that can write them, and you matter. Going over here to follow up with Reed Southern, people aren't carefully rewording the definition of art in order to exclude AI. They're just defining it the way it's always been defined, as a uniquely human thing. It's AI folks who are attempting to redefine it to justify themselves, not the other way around. Art, the expression or application of human creativity, skill, and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculptures, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. Going over here to Michael G. Every time I see a YouTuber using an AI thumbnail, I make sure not to click it. I even click the not interested or don't recommend channel option sometimes. For me, it just shows that you don't want to pay an artist, or you're too lazy to make your own. So just know, like, there are people that do believe in using generative AI, and you're never going to convince them not to. But for the most part, what I usually see, the people that are cool with generative AI are the ones that use it themselves, and so they have the most to gain. But people that don't use it don't want to see it. So, like, you're never going to convince otherwise. It's just going to end up starting to sort people. You also have over here, Canva is also introducing generative AI into their system. So, I hope that they realize if it's related to the Leon stuff or Stable Diffusion, they're going to get knocked down too. Also over here with Reuters exclusive, multiple AI companies are bypassing web standards to scrape publisher sites, licensing firm says. So in a move surprising to no one, AI companies are completely ignoring robot.txt and scraping content anyway. No morals, no ethics, just leeches funded by venture capitalists and big tech. The entitlement is unreal. Something I also saw, I don't think I have a tweet for it, was somebody saying that they put ads on their website, like ad money on their websites to be put onto search engines, and it like was used up in half a day. And that is from these generative AI web crawlers just going to the website and using up all that ad. So that ends up defrauding people who pay for ads. and then they just end up getting used by the machines. Reed Southern also adds, AI training is a copyright infringement from uraheber.info. As a closer look at the technology of generative AI models reveals, the training of such models is not a case of text and training mining. It is a case of copyright infringement. And this was September 5th. So we are getting studies that show that it is copyright infringement specifically. They can't get around it by renaming it. The presentation of the interdisciplinary study, Copyright and Training of Generative AI Technology and Legal Foundation, took place today in the European Parliament. They are getting evidence. This study challenges the prevailing European legal stance presented in several arguments. The exceptions of text and data mining should not apply to generative AI training. There is no suitable copyright exception or limitation to justify the massive infringement occurring during the training of generative AI. Even if AI training occurs outside of Europe, developers cannot fully avoid European laws. Also over here, OpenAI considers high-priced subscriptions to its chatbot AI. Preview the Information AI Summit. How much could that be? How much are you willing to pay for ChatGPT every month? 50, 75, how about 20, 200, 2,000? It's also funny to me to look at this and have people have said it is the elitists that are trying to stop the poor people from being able to create art, but it's, go and do it. Just go and do it. These are wanting to charge you. Canva, and going on with Canva over there, Canva says its AI features are worth the 300 price increase. So they're using this stuff to justify cost on you. Meanwhile, you also have the bite. OpenAI pleads that it can't make money without using copyrighted materials for free. If they had to pay for this stuff, they could not exist. So I don't know how you get around this in the court system. And again, this is September 4th. So this stuff is all going to affect the copyright lawsuits that are currently going on, because you can't even deny that copyrighted content is being used. Not everybody wants it either. Even though it is being thrust on a lot of people, many people don't want to use it. To George Crudo, who is a toy designer at ZBrush digital sculptor and 3D character art, Polygon grown man who makes toys, posted this: if you are a professional artist in games or film, do you use generative AI in your workflow and enjoy it? This is an anonymous poll, so you are safe to answer honestly. And 84.6% out of 1,858 votes said no, and I don't want to. Going over here to Ed Newton Rex, calling it training data normalizes exploitation. Training falsely equates it with human learning. Data distracts from the fact that it is a creative output. A better term is optimizing images. Inserts whichever media is being used. Use media if it is a multiple media type. What optimizing images did you use? What training data did you use? When companies copy millions of images to train Gen AI models on them, it's more accurate to say that they are optimizing models with images than training models with data. Same with the LLMs, music models, etc. I remember when somebody took some of my artwork and said they optimized it by putting it into Gen AI, but they didn't say. They tried to hide that they Gen AI'd it because they knew how I felt about Gen AI. And with Ed Newton Rex, yet another poll shows that the public overwhelmingly thinks AI companies should get permission from artists before training on their work. In July of 2024, of 808 registered U.S. voters polled, 87 agreed that AI developers should receive an artist's consent before using their voices or images to train AI. 77 are strong agree, 10% somewhat agree, and only 3% disagree. So that's just obviously one poll of 808 voters, but it is still something. Over here with Grady Bruch, LLMs do not think or reason. LLMs interpolate within a high-dimensional latent space. They are undeniably capable of generating remarkably coherent results, which is their strength, but do not in any sense of the word understand, which is their weakness. As such, they are inherently biased by the nature of their training corpus, and when they attempt to extrapolate beyond their training, they tend to confabulate. Human thinking and human understanding are not mere statistical processes, as are LLM, and to assert that they are represents a profound misunderstanding of the exquisite uniqueness of human cognition. To paraphrase Sagan, the brain does much more than predict. It generates abstractions. It builds theories of the world, of others, and of itself, to much of our own dismay, right? It has agency, to as much amazement as it is to our dismay. It has agency that is tempered by complex interpretation of its subject experience, its goals, its desires, and its feelings, and I have reason to believe that the mind is capable, that sentient sentience and sapience are beautiful consequences of the law of physics. Someday we may understand how beautiful the mind is, but this is not that day, and likely not even the generation. LLMs are not the path. They are a small part of the journey. You know, as much as talking to people sometimes makes me very depressed because it's like talking to a wall, and as depressing as some of the generative AI stuff can be, it also gets me very excited and I feel more connected with people when talking about human nature, human spirit, the way that the human mind works, the communication, expression. It gets me very excited and hopeful. In other bad news, we have Hasbro CEO says AI will become a core part of Dungeons and Dragons. Fortunately, some have already dropped all of Dungeons and Dragons because they have ruined whatever. But we know they've been using it for a while. Wizard of the Coast has been bragging about using it. So I'm sorry to anybody who has to suffer this Dungeons and Dragons shenanigans. Meanwhile, what has also happened, unfortunately, are plans to train AI models to understand the EU's rich cultural and social and historical contributions remain paused while the EU regulators remain unable to agree how the law should be applied. As Mark and Daniel Ek, CEO of Spotify, recently warned, the EU risks. So what's going on here is that, for those who are not up to date, here is the recent thread about how Meta took people's posts, pictures, and work as far back as 2007 to train their Gen AI models. No one could opt out, no one except for the EU due to its laws that the president of Meta's global affairs is complaining about. So Meta has taken everything since 2007 to train, and you couldn't do anything about it. Meanwhile, going back to how generative AI hurts learning, I've seen a couple different threads talking about this now too, is schools using generative AI to create curriculum, to create school plans, to create lesson plans, and not double checking it. So apparently the human touch of knowing child development is being outsourced as well, which kind of funny considering all of the book stuff and teachers knowing what they're doing stuff. I'm not saying that this questions what teachers are doing. I'm saying if teachers know better and should be the ones putting stuff together for kids, then there is no excuse to outsource it to ChatGPT, which is also filled with content that is not meant for children's learning, for school learning. That should be a thing made by adults. But if the teachers can't be bothered to create the learning content for the kids, I don't see how it should even be in schools. That's just how I feel. And continuing with that, today I learned that the Big Three, APA, Chicago, MLA, have all established a citation standard for ChatGPT generated text. They are putting a company behind the generators, and the date you generated it counts, even though the text is not replicable or searchable. Institutions are allowing AI hallucinated facts in submitted works if you attribute them to your app that you used. This is insane, and we're spiraling down the drain faster. True. You can't really go, hey, I'm citing my mom for telling me this thing, but apparently you can just cite ChatGPT that can't tell you a source of where it got its information. On the ending side of things here, Reed Southern, rarely have I seen AI described so succinctly. I mentioned this on Thursday's video. The underlying purpose of AI is to allow wealth to access skill while removing from the skilled the ability to access wealth. That is, using your skills to bargain for income. And that is important. People working deserve to be paid for their work. People who have a skill that you desire to use deserve to be able to either give it away for free, should they choose to, or to ask for payment for their labor. It is all about respecting the individual's right to their own abilities and letting them negotiate. Finally, I want to close with this Dylan O'Sullivan quote from C.S. Lewis, because I think it encapsulates the beauty of human art and why I love art as much as I do, and will always stand by art and artists. And I know that I'm a loser for the way that I am, okay? I just accept that. I just got to accept my place in life. And it's those of us who have been true readers all of our lives seldom fully realize the enormous extension of our beings which we owe to the authors. We may be full of goodness and good sense, but he inhabits a tiny world. In it, we should be suffocated. The man who is contented to be only by himself and therefore less of a self is in a prison. My own eyes are not enough for me. I will see through those of others. Reality, even seen through the eyes of many, is not enough. I will see what others have invented. And that's what I love about books is I still, whether I like the book or not, I still get to see a world as envisioned by another person, what they want to show me, the morals that they envision, the types of characters that they want to show me, the types of themes, the types of adventures or the lack of adventures. And some people have insanely cool characters that just make me feel so glad that something exists. Again, I think I talked about this on Thursday. I'm glad that Yakuza exists. I'm glad that Resident Evil exists. I think it's just fun. I have so many different projects that I just love and I'm glad that they exist. Books that I have read more recently that I am glad they exist, whether it is The Origin of the Sky or St. Gregory as some new authors, or We Need to Talk About Kevin, or Bret Easton Ellis, so I'm not just mentioning, newer authors, or My Dark Vanessa, is when I find stuff that I love. I am so glad that it exists. I'm not going to say I don't have things I'm like, I wish that was never published because I just hate it so much. But you still see things through somebody else's eye. I still, from reading Iron Flame and Fourth Wing, I still saw things through that author's eyes that she wanted to show me. I didn't like it, but that's just what we do. Now, I do want to say that you don't have to be a reader for your entire life to appreciate this. I did not read very much I didn't read very much formal content when I was younger. And this was also an article/video I wanted to talk about because I got some contradicting articles, which obviously you can find an article for anything. So conversation is the key to finding the truth. Anyway, I didn't read much as a kid. I read Pony Pals, but I mostly played pretend with my sister. I played with like Barbie dolls and Polly dolls and the stuff that we got from McDonald's. They all kind of went in the same thing. And we played on the playset out in the backyard and in the pool. And we just made stories most of anything. And then I wrote. I was always writing when I learned how to write. And it's transferred into writing my first little fictions that were all terrible and that were derivatives of things that I was watching at the time. And I would use Where's Waldo mostly to like go to different pages to find scenarios and then like make stuff up about like what was going on in the scenario. And then I was reading manga mostly in my teens and early 20s and also role playing. That's mostly what I did. And it wasn't until I got into grad school for creative writing that I started reading more formal writing. And it was after grad school that I actually started to enjoy reading because I could read differently. And enjoy reading doesn't necessarily mean I enjoy every book. It just means that I found a different sort of love for reading. And again, like I keep saying, even if I don't love a book, I find reading insanely interesting. And I am so glad. I love the art form. It is, I think, my favorite. It's hard. Actually, you know what? It's very hard to say what my favorite art form is because music is different, books are different, television/visual is different, paintings and art are different. But I love what art does. And when I see it, I know that it means something to me. And looking at what people make, what is a part of them that they are willing to show, that is what I love. Anyway, those are the generative AI news updates for you this week. I know it was a lot. I really appreciate that one article. The different things talked about today will be linked in the description down below. So let me know what your thoughts are. How are you feeling? I hope you're feeling hopeful because I am. I don't know. I think it's pretty hard to beat as long as I've got hope in art. I just wish I could draw better, okay? I wish it wasn't so hard to learn. And I also, wish that first drafts weren't so hard. I've been switching projects like nobody's business. But I think that I've finally settled because Monty can correct me. But I think we've determined that we're going to work on the Westies and then also work on our individual side projects together. So then the Westies can give me something really fun to work on while I work on my secret project that is gonna get me in trouble. With that said, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Have a great weekend. Don't be down, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Wei. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?